Welcome to Johnny Carson Files. On this video, Walter Matthau reaches into a battered leather satchel he has carried into every interview for 3 decades and pulls out a single yellowed baseball card, its corners soft with age. Jack Lemmon, sitting beside him, goes completely still the moment he sees it, because that card should not exist anymore. He watched it burn with his own eyes in 1958. But before we dive in, quick reminder, double-check that you're subscribed, since a lot of you think you already are and aren't. It's free, and it really helps the channel. Thank you for being here. The Tonight Show was recorded that afternoon in the fall of 1981, before a studio audience of roughly 300 people at NBC's Burbank studios. The broadcast set to air to nearly 19 million Americans later that night. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau had been on the couch together for almost 15 minutes, trading the kind of easy insults that had defined their friendship both on screen and off since the two of them met on a Broadway stage in the winter of 1955. Johnny Carson barely had to ask questions. He mostly leaned back and let the two men run the show themselves, the way he always did when the chemistry was good enough to carry itself. "Jack," Johnny said at one point, grinning, "is it true you two have been fighting the same argument for 25 years? Walter's the only man alive who owes me $12 from 1958 and still hasn't paid," Jack said. Walter Matthau's eyebrows went up in mock offense, and the audience laughed right on cue. Wait, do not miss this detail, because what Walter said next was not part of the bit, and the shift in his voice was subtle enough that only Jack seemed to notice it first. "Actually," Walter said, reaching down toward the leather satchel resting against his chair, "that's not entirely true anymore. I've been carrying something around for a while, Jack, and I think today's the day I finally give it to you." Jack Lemmon's easy grin faltered. He knew that satchel. He had seen Walter carry it into 100 interviews over the years, had asked him once what was inside, and had gotten nothing but a shrug and a change of subject. He reached inside and pulled out a small yellowed baseball card, its edges worn soft, a faint crease running down the center of the player's face. He held it up between 2 fingers. Jack Lemmon's face went white. "That can't be," Jack said quietly. "I watched that card burn. What you have seen so far is nothing compared to what happened next, because the story behind that small piece of cardboard reached back 23 years, to a cramped apartment on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and a night that had nearly ended a friendship before it had properly begun. Winter of 1958, New York City. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau had been friends for 3 years by then, 2 struggling actors sharing whatever work came along, splitting rent when one of them was short, and arguing constantly about baseball, a passion that consumed nearly as much of their conversation as acting did. Jack had grown up idolizing the Brooklyn Dodgers, and among his most prized possessions was a 1947 Jackie Robinson rookie card, given to him by his father before he passed away 2 years earlier. It was, without question, the single most valuable thing Jack Lemmon owned, worth more to him than any script or paycheck. One January night, the two of them were in Walter's cramped apartment, a small space heater working overtime against the cold, when an argument broke out over a bet neither of them could quite remember the origin of years later. Walter Matthau, feeling reckless and a little too proud after a few drinks, snatched the card off the table where Jack had set it down and held it toward the space heater's open coils, threatening to burn it if Jack didn't concede the argument. "Put it down, Walter," Jack said, his voice suddenly serious in a way that cut through the joking atmosphere of the evening. "That's not a joke to me." Walter, caught up in his own bravado, hesitated just a half-second too long, and the corner of the card caught the heater's glow, a thin curl of smoke rising from the edge before Jack lunged across the room and knocked it from his hand. The card hit the floor, one corner scorched black, the image of Jackie Robinson permanently marked by a small burn that would never fade. Neither man said anything for a long moment. Jack picked up the card, looked at the damage, and without a word, walked out of the apartment into the freezing New York night. He didn't return Walter's calls for 11 days. On the 12th day, Walter showed up at Jack's building, stood outside in the cold for nearly 2 hours because Jack wouldn't buzz him up, and when Jack finally came down to the street, Walter Matthau, a man not known for public displays of vulnerability, apologized in a way Jack would describe decades later as the most honest thing he had ever heard another actor say off a stage. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," Walter said that night. "I was trying to win an argument, and I didn't think about what that card actually meant. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm just asking you to let me try to make it right, however long that takes." Jack forgave him within the week, though the scorched card remained a quiet sore spot between them for years, an old wound neither of them brought up directly. What Jack didn't know, what he wouldn't learn until that stage in 1981, was that Walter Matthau had spent the following 23 years doing something about it. Back in the Burbank studio, Walter held the card steady in his hand as the audience sat in stunned silence, waiting for an explanation neither Jack nor anyone else in the room could yet provide. "This isn't the same card," Walter said quietly. Jack looked closer, his eyes narrowing, studying the small photograph, the type, the corners. "I spent years," Walter continued, tracking down a dealer who specialized in matching damaged cards, describing the exact burn pattern on yours from memory, hoping somewhere out there existed a second copy in similar condition that I could restore properly, professionally, the way it should have looked before I ever touched it." He paused. "It took me 19 years to find someone willing to take on the restoration, and another 4 years for them to get it right. This is your card, Jack, restored exactly the way it looked before that night, before I was stupid enough to almost destroy something that mattered to you more than I understood at the time." The studio audience gasped as one, a sound that rippled backward through all 300 seats. Ed McMahon, who had been laughing along with the earlier banter, slowly set down the coffee cup in his hand. Johnny Carson leaned forward at his desk, momentarily forgetting the show entirely. Jack Lemmon took the card from Walter's outstretched hand with both of his own, staring down at it as though he were looking at his father's face rather than a piece of cardboard. "I've thought about that card almost every week for 23 years, Jack said, his voice breaking. "Not because of the burn, because of what it meant that you cared enough to spend that long trying to fix something I never even asked you to fix." Walter Matthau, a man whose entire public persona was built on gruff sarcasm and deadpan complaint, sat with tears standing openly in his eyes, something the cameras caught in unforgiving close-up. "I never stopped thinking about the look on your face that night," Walter said. "I've been the funniest man on 100 sets, Jack, and none of it ever made up for putting that look on your face even once." Jack Lemmon reached over and gripped Walter's shoulder, and for a long moment neither man said anything at all, because there was nothing left that needed saying. Johnny Carson, visibly moved, looked directly into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "that's 23 years of friendship right there, and if that doesn't tell you something about what these two men mean to each other, I don't know what will. If a story like this moves you even a little, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps these stories reach more people. And I want to ask you something specific. Think of a small thing someone once did that they probably don't even remember, but you never forgot. Drop just one word describing it in the comments below, so we can see how many quiet things like that people are still carrying around." The Tonight Show ran 7 minutes over its scheduled time that evening, and NBC's switchboard stayed busy well past midnight. Jack Lemmon kept that restored card in his wallet for the rest of his life, a small detail his family confirmed after his passing in 2001, tucked behind his driver's license, worn soft from 20 more years of handling. Walter Matthau passed away just a year later, in 2000, and at his memorial service, Jack Lemmon, who was gravely ill himself by then, stood and spoke for less than a minute, holding up his wallet for the small gathered crowd to see. He kept trying to fix things he thought he broke, Jack said, his voice thin but steady. Most of the time, the only thing that was ever really broken was how long it took either of us to say what we actually felt. If this story moved you, think about the people who have spent years quietly trying to make something right without ever asking for credit or forgiveness in return. Subscribe so you never miss these stories. And before you go, hit that like button if this one got you. It really does help. Then drop a comment and tell me, is there something small someone did for you once that you still think about? Just tell us what it was. Let's remember them here together.